Welcome to Adobe Photoshop in the Classroom, the first webinar. For those of you asking about versions of Photoshop, you can have any version CS5 onwards, or if you have CS4 it should be fine. There might be a few small things that are a bit different, but it should be fine. And if you don't have it installed, there are trial versions. We'll go over that in just a minute. So anyone using CS5, CS6, Creative Cloud version, CS 5.5, you're all perfectly fine. So this short course is actually based on the first 4 weeks, or the first few weeks, of a subject in the Masters of ICT in Education at CSU. It's called ITI 569, Adobe Digital Curriculum. That subject itself covers Photoshop, Illustrator, Acrobat, and InDesign. So you'll learn to use all those programs in that subject. However, right now we're just using Photoshop, and that's all we're going to be working with. Can you guys all hear me? I just want to make sure you can hear me. You can see the screen has changed just a little bit at least. Awesome. Now there are a few ways we're going to go through using this short course. Firstly, you're going to learn to use Photoshop so that you can actually use it. One of the most common questions we got when we announced the short course is it okay if I don't know how to use Photoshop? Is it okay if I've never opened the program before? It's absolutely fine. We're hoping to cover all of the basics and anything you really need. And we're going to start from the very beginning, and hopefully all of you who've never even opened the program are going to be fine. The other things we're going to be hoping to cover is utilizing Photoshop in the classroom. So creating things that you can use in your classrooms and share with your students. And with Photoshop it usually covers print media, so it'll be things you would print out. And also learning to teach Photoshop to students. For those of you who are teaching in secondary or TAFE environments, you can learn to teach Photoshop to students and also your colleagues. Unfortunately, one of the issues with a short course like this, where it's available to any teachers, is that a lot of you will be in different environments. So in the questions box, if you could just put in primary, secondary, TAFE, just to give me some show of numbers. Yeah, and so we've even got some admin people there. Got a nice big just wall of text. For those of you who've never been involved in some online webinars like this, you're all on mute, and that's unfortunate. But if we've got a few hundred in here tonight, if you weren't on mute, then there would be a lot of background noise, and I like everyone to be able to hear me, so if no one could hear me, it's kind of defeats the purpose of this webinar. So you're all on mute. I won't take you off mute unless there's something really specific to do. If you have a question, type it in the questions box. It's the easiest way to be seen. Jeff, our admin guy, will respond to you if it's an admin question, or if it's a question about what I'm doing in Photoshop. Hopefully I'll see it and I'll be able to help you out. Unfortunately, I'll have to make sure I see it because there's quite a few of you typing in questions. So, yeah, you're all on mute. You can put your hand up if you're having any difficulties, and Jeff might chat to you via the chat box, but for most part put your questions in the question box so everyone else can see them. So the way this subject works, so the way the subject in CSU works and the way that this short course is going to work is we're going to be using something called the Adobe Digital Curriculum. It's a free open source curriculum that Adobe have designed for schools, where students work through projects, and the more you work through these projects, the more you create the projects, the more skills you gather in Photoshop and those other programs I listed before, until the end you have hopefully a wide variety of skills in these programs. Somebody asked the question, what campus of CSU is this from? It's organised by the Wagga Wagga campus, however it's done by distance education. So if you were to sign up for the Masters, you wouldn't have to attend classes, any physical classes. You would have to probably attend some online lectures. But yeah, no physical classes, just online classes and occasionally attending an exam at exam centres near you. Claire, you've said you've never used Photoshop in the classroom and you want to, so is this for you? Like I said earlier, we are actually going to, we're going to cover how to use Photoshop firstly, and that's the most important part for a lot of these people. And then probably not in this week, but in further weeks we'll be covering sort of information about how to utilize it in the classroom, whether it is teaching students how to use it or to use it yourself to create documents to help you teach. Amanda, you've asked where the question box is. You've just typed in a question into it. I will, because it's hard for us to record the questions so that they're visible, I'll read out the questions if you ask them. And I might also save this question dialogue and post it up with the webinar, which of course will be posted up on the learn.itmasters.edu.au site. You don't need to have Photoshop open at the moment. Right now we're just going to be, I'm going to be going through some things with you, and then afterwards you can open up Photoshop and play around with it. Now, to study this, you should have received 2 emails from IT Masters when you registered, or Friday last week, I think, is when the first lot was sent out. One is with the webinar email, which obviously if you're attending the webinar right now, you've received that one. And the other one is the free short course system new user account email. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. Here it is. And I can show you my password here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens when you log in to the free short course system. So it's going to ask you to change your password. Oops. So you have to change your password to something, obviously, that other people can't guess. And in there you'll see the Photoshop in the Classroom page that has, if we can ever open it, currently it's got the Adobe Digital Curriculum that I was talking about there. And it will also have recordings of this webinar, recordings of tutorials on how to do things that I didn't get a chance to cover in the webinar, you know, links to important information, all that sort of thing. It also has the discussion forum. Sorry, it's moving a little slow, probably because there's a few people logged in. So here you can ask questions, and you can respond to other people's questions and post your works if you want to. Now back to our lecture. Instead of going back to the lecture, I'm actually just going to open up Photoshop and show you, start working on what we're doing. Now, Photoshop itself, it's in the name. It's mainly aimed at dealing with photos, which are pixel-based images. Now, I'm just going to open up, for an example, a pixel-based image. Oops. Open it up in Photoshop. File, open. Now this is just a silly little picture. By the way, welcome to Photoshop. If I go Window Navigator and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, you will see that, as you might have guessed, Pixels is made up of thousands of tiny pixels, coloured squares. The other option is obviously vector-based images. Well, not obviously. And I'm opening this up in Illustrator to show you what I mean. I previously turned that pixel-based image into a vector-based image. Vector-based images, as opposed to pixel ones that are made up of little squares, vector-based are made up of mathematical equations of lines. So instead of it all being different coloured squares, you can see there's a line that's all coloured. And if you zoom in, whoops, zoom in, you can see you've lost a lot of the detail that you had on that previous picture, but it doesn't matter how far in you zoom in, it's all the same quality, because the mathematical equation that says that line should be curved to, you know, whatever degree, it never changes. Doesn't matter how big it is. All it knows is there's a line there that should go like that. So that is Illustrator is the program that you would use to edit vector-based images, and photographs, i.e. pixel-based images, are edited usually in Photoshop. Elise has asked, do vector images take up more megabytes or space than pixel images? They usually do, Elise. This image here, when I saved it, and I think I've got saved here, so we've got the pixel-based image, which is 511 KB, and the vector-based image is, what, 12 times the size of that. And it takes a whole lot more information, but it's usually much easier to scale it, to go up and go down. So everyone knows when you take a photo, usually if you zoom in too far, it loses focus, and obviously it loses quality because it's made up of pixels in Photoshop. Now I might just... so as I said, this is Photoshop, and I'm going to reset the workspace. When you open up Photoshop, this is called the Essentials Workspace, and this has all the basic information you would require to use Photoshop. Up here you've got your menu bar, which everyone who's used a computer is pretty familiar with. Sorry, I realised I didn't answer previously Liza's question. She's using a Mac. It'll absolutely work. Photoshop and Illustrator and any other Adobe programs all work on Macs. Sometimes the interface looks just a little bit different, but it's all much the same in the end. So yes, this is the Essentials Workspace. Down here are the tools that you can use to edit photos and that sort of thing. And you'll notice when I change each tool, this little bar up here changes a little because that's the options bar, and that gives you an option for each tool you're using. And over here we have panels, and they all display, you know, different adjustments you can make and different things you can see in your picture. And this is not all the panels available to you. You can see more by clicking Window and opening up what you want to open. So you'll notice before I clicked on here to get to reset my Essentials panel, it's got lots of different workspaces that you can set up, and you can start your own workspace. So if you like to have your history panel open all the time and your navigator panel, so you can grab any panel that you've got open, you can just drag it and it goes away from this panels bar over here. And you can drag it and organize it and save that as a workspace. So you say new workspace, short course. And what that'll do is anytime you want to look at that, at the way that's organized, you can just click it from this option here or up here under Windows Workspace. So I thought for this first short course what I would do is I would open up some images that I've got saved on my computer, and we would work through just fixing up some of the little errors and damage that's been done to the photos over the years, and that'll show you some of the tools available to you on Photoshop. I'm going to be uploading, as soon as this webinar is over, I'm going to be uploading some videos that I've made, one of which is just a really sort of thorough introduction to all of these tools and to everything that's laid out. So I might just, let's have a look. I've got this image here. I'm right-clicking and saying Open with Photoshop. And you can see here this history panel that I've got that I was talking about before is really, really, really powerful, because everyone knows Control-Z will undo something you've done. But with Photoshop, every change you make will be shown up in this history channel up to a few hundred, I think it is actually, so that you can go back as far as you want. We had someone question that they have, their laptop wouldn't allow the installation of the Citrix software necessary to join the webinar. Unfortunately, the Windows version on your home computer is no longer supported by the version of Photoshop that was available for 30-day trial. Any suggestions? Michael, I'll be recording this webinar and putting it up online so you can download it on your laptop and watch it then. You don't need Citrix for that. And then you can install Photoshop and watch it there. James, you can use these videos in the classroom if they're appropriate for what you're doing in class. So just zooming in on this picture, and it's an old one, and it's just literally one that we had in our files that I was using to demonstrate some things for you. You can see it's got, it's obviously been folded a little. And so there are several tools you can use to fix up a photo. Down on the tools bar you can see this healing brush, and any tool you can see that has a little tiny arrow down in the right hand corner, you can drag or click and keep your mouse down and drag, and it comes up with other options. So the option here is healing brush or spot healing brush tool. Spot healing brush tries to work out, based on the content around it, how to fix that image. So if I click and draw like it's a mouse, it doesn't actually work too well on some areas, but it tries to guess how to fix the area in question. And I've just pressed Control-Z and undone that because it didn't look very good. But if I drag that down and choose healing brush, what I can do is select the area. So I can say this area that is broken here. Can you see what I'm indicating, or should I draw with my little GoToWebinar options? Yep. So this area here that's broken looks a lot like this area here. So you can say, I want to repair this area based on this area here. So you click Alt, hold it down, and select that area as your base, and then you paint over it. So you click and hold and paint down, and it sort of fixes that area there. And I'm going to keep going with that. And anytime you want to, you can reset what you think the baseline should be. You can see it's not actually always perfect. If you zoom in here, you can see that there's a slight issue with the edges of that fix there. And if you right-click on the workspace while you've got this option open, it opens up your options for the brush, and you can also see those options right up here in the left-hand corner. And so look at the size of the brush, and if I turn it much larger, you can see what the brush becomes. And if I turn hardness down, what that changes is the edge of the brush. So right now it's, and I'm going to show you on, this is just a normal brush on Photoshop. So this just paints a color, and that's if the hardness is turned all the way up. But when you turn the hardness down to 0%, you can see the edges become fuzzy like that. So turning the hardness down here, down to 0, so the edges become all fuzzy. You can see it's not always perfect. You look at that and go, oh, maybe it's a bit light. Whenever you're correcting photographs, it's hard to remember sometimes to keep in mind that whoever's looking at this corrected version hasn't seen the original. So you can make some small changes as long as it's not going to be noticeable to other people. You have to keep in mind two things when correcting photographs. One, that no one's seen the original. But two, you're correcting this photograph for a reason. You've chosen this photograph for a reason. You don't want to make it look too different from what it was. I like to use the example, has anyone ever seen a magazine cover where the celebrity or whoever it is on the front cover looks vastly different from how they look in movies or wherever, or their skin is completely looks plastic? And a lot of the time it's from overzealous photoshopping. So someone has spent a lot of time trying to make them look perfect and they've gone too far. So as odd as it seems, you need to keep in mind the original photograph, but also remember that no one's seen it. So just fixing up these small errors, and you'll find when you're doing things in Photoshop you need to undo and do over again a million times because something's not quite right. And sometimes you zoom in so close that you lose perspective, but when you're fixing up small errors, the closer you go, the easier it works out. So you press Alt when you're, someone has asked the question, when do you press Alt? What you do is you press Alt when you're selecting the area you want to borrow from. A good example of how to use that sort of Alt selection is the stamp brush. The stamp brush, when you use it, and I'm just going to turn the hardness all the way up, you click Alt, it selects an area and then it draws that area wherever you paint. So I'm just holding my mouse button down and painting here, and you can see it's just drawn from up here. So you click Alt, you select that area, and then that area copies to wherever you're painting. I just want to double check what you press on a Mac. It's also Alt apparently. I just wanted to double check that one. Okay, so if I pressed Alt here, it would copy him up here. Now, the spot healing brush is a bit different. It's trying to fix imperfection, so it's not trying to copy the picture. But if I press Alt here and copy it here, it just tries to use the image around it, but still copy what you've copied in there. So it's tried to fit that face into the background and it doesn't work. But moving closer and closer, and you'll find that happens when you're trying to fix up a photo or play around in Photoshop. One of the things, yep, I can make the brush smaller, but yeah, when you're trying to fix up a photo, sometimes it pays just to go so close that you don't even know what you're looking at. And you can do that with the navigator, which you can see Windows Navigator, and it's usually, it'll come up on this bar here, on the side here. But the navigator is pretty great because you can just zoom in, and that little red square actually just selects where you have chosen to have your mouse or to have your screen, and you can obviously just scroll to where you want to be. So Vicky asked if you can make the brush smaller. Absolutely. Right-click and choose size. So that's a really large mouse and a really small one. Or you can see it up here. And if I zoom out, and if you ever choose a mouse button and you can't see it, so I'm going to zoom in actually, and you can't see it at all, and it just comes up with that little cross there. Can you guys see that cross? Yep. That usually means, because sometimes you'll do that and you'll be like, where's my mouse, my little thing gone? That usually means it's too big. So keep that in mind when you're playing around with your pictures. And then you just select the area and try and fix it as best you can. When fixing up photos, when fixing up like this sort of bend here, it's best to play around with different tools. There's no one tool in Photoshop that's going to fix every single problem. There are a lot of powerful tools, but you can see here that it doesn't always work perfectly. So the healing brush here, it uses too much information and it just doesn't seem to understand what you're trying for. So here's another stage where this stamped clone tool, the clone stamp tool, sorry, is more powerful. So let's turn the size way down and the hardness way down and select an area, Alt, Tiana's asked what key is it to go back? Control Z, like in most programs. You can also use the history panel, which I showed you before, and again, Windows history. So Alt, keep going, keep going. And when you're using the clone stamp tool, it's best to keep selecting new areas to work from. You can change the clone stamp tool so that I might just open a recent file. This one here, because it's got different colors, it's easier for me to demonstrate what's happening. Now I'm going to turn the clone stamp tool much larger. And I'm going to select Alt, click, Alt press, and you can see it's drawing here. And if I click again, it's just going to keep selecting, starting from the beginning. But Alt click, yep. So it's just a way to copy the image easily for you guys. Sorry, I just don't want to miss any important questions you guys have got going for actually what we're doing in Photoshop. Some tools, Elise has asked, the clone tool only copies, other tools do not. The clone tool copies comfortably on the layer you're working. Layers, you can see the layers panel here. Layers is how Photoshop really works, and a lot of Adobe programs work like this. I like to think of layers as pieces of paper sitting on top of each other. So if I were to copy this picture here, and I just said Control A, Control C, and click Control V here and paste it on top, you can see on the Layers panel here, there are now two options. There's Layer 1 and and background. So the background is that picture of the boy, and the top is the copied picture of the guy with the bunny suit. And I can move it around with this button here. You can move a layer around like a piece of paper sitting on top of another paper. And if, for instance, I was to use the eraser, which is the eraser here, and erase a major part of this image, you can see it's sort of just like I've torn that part of the piece of paper out. What you do, so if I had these two layers and I was trying to fix this guy here, you can see that it doesn't actually work very well because it only works on the layer you have selected. So Dan has asked, I thought the clone tool was only supposed to stamp whatever the clone was, the clone that was cloned within the area rather than drawing out the whole thing, i.e. the rabbit ear should be repeating when drawn rather than the full face. Nope, it keeps going until you stop clicking the button. So if I go Alt Select, so Alt Click, and again that's how you select what you're cloning, and I start drawing, it works like that. But if I start drawing again, it goes back to the start. I'm just going to undo the eraser. Rebecca's asked, can I resize the larger one, for example, to make their heads the same size? You absolutely can. So there are a few ways to do it. You can go Edit, Transform, Scale. Sorry. If you select this guy, Edit, so select the arrow up here, Edit, Transform, Scale. You can see that box around it, and that represents the image that I've pasted onto that layer. So I can change it and make it bigger and make it smaller. If you have the corner arrow clicked while you try and make it bigger and smaller and press down on Shift, it constrains the proportion, which means that instead of making him much, too skinny or too wide, it keeps him the same proportions the image was and makes it, goes down the size the same width and the same height compared to each other. So once you've done that, you click Enter. You can also get to the transform by clicking Control-T. And that's really powerful because you can do a few other things with that one as well. So Control-T, you can twirl him around. And if you click Shift while you twirl him around, what it does is it twirls him in a way that fits sort of normal angles. So 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 15, 0 degrees. See what I mean? It sort of sticks to those angles. Yep, Shift key to keep proportions or to keep angles. Or aspect ratio or whatever you want to call it. So Haley has asked a question, how do I add colour to a black and white image? You can absolutely just make the hat coloured. And one of the tools, so we've got the brush tool, and so you can see over in the panels you've got swatches. So let's pick a colour. We've got red. And if you use the brush tool on the background, and you can see it's not letting me, it's got a little angry line, and if I click it says could not use the brush tool because the target layer is hidden, because I've still got that layer selected with the old man and the bunny ears. If I select the background layer, now if you just tried to colour it in with the brush, it looks really, really pathetic and not right. But there is also, you can change the mode of the brush. So this is, again, make sure you all know the brush tool. You can change it much like you could the clone brush. Change the hardness, change the size. And you can change the mode of painting. So there are a lot of options here. Some of them make sense when you just read the color. Some of them you need to try out. So exclusion sort of does an opposite sort of color effect. There is also the color tool. And that just, you don't lose any of the detail, and obviously the color is not right here. And you have to paint it in a neat sort of way. But you can see it just sort of colors over everything. So if you click the paintbrush and then you click color. You could also change the layers to have different modes. So if I click on this old man here and I change that to color, you can see it's just sort of colored in everything in the same colors it was previously. So if you wanted to color in this guy's hat, you would choose a color that works pretty well considering the black and white. So it's very bright here, and you can change that around by changing the hue, the saturation. Okay. Somebody has asked the question, what are you pressing to delete what you've done? I'm not deleting what I've done necessarily. I'm pressing Control Z a lot, which undoes what I've done, and that only undoes one step. So if you're using, and it's the same if you're using Word or most programs, Control Z undoes something. If I wanted to, I could go back to the beginning, and in history you can click through these options. You can also, they have these buttons here, so if I went to here and I've gone back to before I pasted in the old man, you can choose create a snapshot of that option, or create, this one here, is to create a new document based on the stage you're at now. So that creates a new document based on that clone stamp, but I can go back to this guy here and I still can maneuver through this stage. However, if I went back to free transform, so this is a stage I did earlier, and then I changed something here, so I painted a line here, it just deletes all those other options I had. So again, somebody has said I missed how you started colouring, and I'll upload this to the web, but how I started colouring, I've chosen the brush, I've chosen the size of I want my brush, and I've chosen the hardness so that the edges are quite solid, and I've chosen it to colour. And I pick a colour that I find works best. You can see down here is your palettes, and that's the colour you've chosen. And you can change around what colour it is. So this changes how much saturation is involved, or how much light or dark is involved, and you can change what colour is involved here. So you drag it up and down, you choose the greens or anything like that. And you can click Add to Swatches if you like that colour and you think you're going to use it again and again. So the swatches are over here. Or you can just, when you have that colour that you want selected as your main colour, you can just click an empty space in the swatches and it just creates a new colour for you to use. The background colour is literally the background colour. If I were to delete a part of this image here, so erase some of it, it uses that background colour, that bright red that I have chosen as the background colour, as the main sort of, as the background of it. And if I were to use image, canvas size. So there are two options when it comes to size, just so you know. You can change the image size, which would make the man, the boy, bigger or smaller. So if I went 3 centimeters and I keep that little button clicked, that constrains the proportions so that his height changes size with his width. Or if I change the canvas size, that's like saying, here's a little photo, but the canvas size is the size of, well, the canvas it's sitting on. So if I change that to 150%, here you go. So somebody has asked the question, isn't there a tool that allows you to smart target areas, i.e. like the hat and color the whole thing so it's easier? There is, absolutely. So your options are to, using the paintbrush, to either color like that or to select the hat and color it there. So obviously everyone has used some form of selection to control, to copy and paste something. So you could select a square using that rectangular marquee, or you can use this lasso tool to draw around the shape you want to select. And if you click on the lasso tool and keep your button down, it'll give you other options. And there's the polygonal, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right, lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic one sort of sticks to the edges of high contrast images. Now it's not very perfect, as you can see. And if I click Control D, it deselects what I have selected. The other options are here. We've got the magic wand tool, which tries to select everything of a certain color. And that depends on your tolerance you've got up here. So if I use the tolerance as 1, it will literally only select anything that is that color. If I choose the tolerance as 100, it'll select everything that's kind of that color. We've had some sound problems. Does everyone else have sound problems? Or okay, good. The other tool, quick selection tool, is a lot more easy to use. And that is like a brush that you can make bigger and smaller. Size. And you hold down and click, and it sort of selects things. It's not perfect. And during the video uploads that I'm going to upload tonight, I'll show you some other ways to select things. We don't really have that much time tonight. But once you've got that selected, if I use the paintbrush, it will only paint in the area I have selected. So you can see that little sort of glittering line around what I've got selected. And you can see when I paint outside of it, it just doesn't paint anything else. So if I press Control D, you can see it's only painted the hat. Whereas if I'm not got anything selected, it paints everything around there. So like I said, there's better ways to do it so that the lines aren't quite so blurry there. I just wanted to... but it's a good way to start off with. Now, I'm going to take it back to before I actually made that painting. If we've got that selection, and I explained to you what the selection was, if I go select inverse, what that does is inverses the selection. So that hat is no longer selected, but everywhere around it is. So anything that wasn't selected previously is now selected, and anything that was selected is no longer selected. Paul, we don't have as much power to adjust the auto-selected lines. When I've got this quick selection on, so I go select, and it selects the hat, and if I wanted to select the boy's face, I can click Shift, and you can see it starts selecting that as well. But if I don't have Shift, but if I click Alt, I can take out selections. So hold down Alt while you're selecting, and it can take out parts. But again, it's not perfect. It's not something that you could successfully, really adjust in small areas where you need to. You can click Refine Edge, and that gives you the options to, if you smooth the edge, you can see what's happening here. It's showing you what I've got selected when I click Refine Edge. I'm going to click that again. So I've got the boy, it's got the hat selected. Click Refine Edge. That's what I have selected. And if I click Radius, it sort of smooths out the edge. And you can smooth the edge. I'm going to try and demonstrate this to you. So if you smooth the edge, it fuzzes it, like you can see, and it sort of makes it all straighter lines, like a smoothed edge. And if I feather the edge, it's much like when I was talking about the hardness of a brush. Change the contrast. You can shift the edge so that goes bigger and smaller. So there are lots of different options. I find the best way for me to select an option like that is to use the pen tool, which I'm going to demonstrate. I've got a video to upload for you guys to show that one. Because it's a much more powerful and useful tool, and you can use it a lot in the future. Somebody has asked the question, would they use quick selection for magazine design or the pen tool? They would use the pen tool, probably, or something else. Quick selection is really good in a pinch, but it's not a very exact science. How do you bring up Refine Edge is another question somebody's asked, and you just click this button up here on the options bar, and it gives you lots of different options. Dan, most brushes do some things with Alt, Control, and or Shift. When I cover them in the videos, I'll usually cover what happens if you use Alt or Control or Shift, but it is worth playing around. So if I press Control D, somebody has asked about the polygonal tool. The polygonal tool, actually you just select by clicking one here. You've started your selection. You can see that line, and you only go by lines. So obviously that's not very accurate. Now, the reason I wasn't going to show you the pen tool now is because we've just got the question, do we get homework? Yep, you get homework. Now, the reason we're going with, sorry, I'll just move this over here so we don't, I can just search around for this. The reason I've uploaded the Adobe digital curriculum is because what it is a whole project that you can do to create all these files and things. So there's an introduction document that shows you, that tells you all about what the Adobe digital curriculum is. And project 1 is called Collages and Photography. And it's all these steps you go through to do project 1. So if you read through this, this here is the teacher's instruction manual. And there are two ways to view it. So this is what, if you were teaching students Photoshop and InDesign and that sort of thing, you would have this for yourself, and then the student guides, which there are more here, would be what you would show students. So if you read through this, it gives you ideas of what you're creating and what you're doing. And it starts off really simple, using a digital camera, introducing you to Photoshop. And there are little tasks that you can complete. So I might start discussion forums for the tasks that you guys can complete. it would be great to see you guys starting with just fixing up some simple images, using all those tools like the spot healing tool and the clone tool. And then we're going to move on to collages. Romany, that really depends on what you want to create. This whole short course, because it is free, and you do get a certificate at the end, we have to have, it's just a short little quiz at the end, you get a certificate of participation, but you don't get a really graded experience in the short course because it is a free short course. Jane has asked, will you be giving us the images or should we supply our own? I will supply some of the images I've used tonight and you can play around with those, or you could use your own images from home. Simon has asked, is this really for secondary tertiary teachers and for those who've had some experience in the Photoshop Adobe suite? It seems the questions being posed are from people who seem to know a lot more than me. Simon, the task will be very explanatory. You should, if you go through these steps, if you go through the student guides, whoops, that's not the first one you should go through. Overview of the Adobe Photoshop CS6 workspace. So it should be fairly easy for you to work through. When you've created something and you want to upload it to the Moodle site, you should change it on, do your fixing on Photoshop. And instead of uploading the Photoshop document, which will be large, if you just clicked File, Save, I'm just going to save it here, and you'll see in my, nope, wrong folder. Sorry, just one moment. Here you go. It's a really large image. Instead of that, I would ask you to go File, Save for Web. And you can see here, this is the option to save it so that it's a little smaller. So you can turn the quality down, you can turn the size down. But even if you don't turn the quality down or the size down, you can see 387 KB compared to nearly 2.5 meg. Anyone who thinks they're lost, I'm going to upload some much slower videos tonight. Just, this is Photoshop. These are the tools. This is what you should do. Now, to find the curriculum, go to learn.itmasters.edu.au and you log in using the information available to you in that free short course system new user account email that you should have received, and click on Photoshop in the classroom. So the Adobe Digital Curriculum is already up, and after this webinar is finished, I'll upload some more videos. And your homework for this week is just to start off with altering some images and posting them up on the forums. I want to see you fixing up some images and playing around with it. And this is mainly to get you using Photoshop. People keep saying it's so scary. That's because they haven't tried to play with the program. Once you start playing with it, you'll find that it becomes easier. Joshua has asked, do we need to include an original in the altered image? Absolutely, include your original so that we can see your amazing work and what you've done. Absolutely play around with your own images, Sky. But remember to include the before picture. If you're going to play around with the images I upload, we probably don't need the before picture. But for the rest of you, David has asked, is there anything specific you want? There's I just want you to play around with Photoshop, and I want you to learn how to use those tools that I've demonstrated tonight, and post all your work up in the discussion forum. These images that I'm using tonight are from our own personal family images, so that should be fine. You'll be able to see the images that people post, yes. Patricia has asked, when we're done with the tool, how do we get out of it? So you're in Photoshop. Do you mean one of these tools? You just select the next tool that you want. That all depends. Joshua's asked, do we need permission if the photos are other people? That all depends on the other people. These photos here are family members, and I know that they're okay with them being used. I won't be, publishing these photos on the web for other people, but it's good to ask permission. Posting the discussion forum. I will add a new discussion topic that has the, I can do it right now actually. So altering images, and you can drop in photos as you need it. Don't create a new discussion for every photo work that you do. Post it in this discussion that I'm going to create here. And I was about to post that, and then I realized that it's come from my test email address. Someone has asked what version of Photoshop am I showing in the course, and this is Photoshop Creative Cloud, I think it is, which is a way you can, it's a subscription model of Adobe, where you pay, I think I pay $15 a month because I'm using the education copy, and you get access to all of the Creative Suite. Okay, so you can download a Photoshop trial. There are education copies of Photoshop. I use the subscription edition because it does work out cheaper for me. You can get, I think, I'll double check the education price right now. And so that is the all of the Creative Suite. There are some options for DET teachers, I know, but I'm not sure of them myself, not being a DET teacher. CS4 should be fine. There might be some small things you can't do, but most of it should be fine. So apparently the WA Education Department Data 3 for Photoshop Elements is good. And DEC teachers have the Masters Collection for the latest product. And they send you the discs, apparently. And if you're still waiting for discs to arrive, you can try Photoshop for a month. I might start another discussion forum up on the Moodle site, and that will demonstrate how to, so that, sorry, not demonstrate, that will let you post where you've got your versions of Photoshop if you've got cheaper education versions. Being a student of this course doesn't make you eligible for education editions because it's not an official recognised course. But yeah, being an educator in most schools will let you. I know I signed up for the education copy of this, and it only required me to put in my edu.au address. Tian, when you say check your email and course schedule, I'm a little confused about that one, sorry. Linda has said most state school teachers should be able to get a copy from the IT department if the school has a school licence, certainly in Queensland. Kruberben, I'm going to post a step-by-step video for most of what I've covered tonight. Brenda, unfortunately, most of the questions you can't really see them coming in. I can see them and I read them out, but I will save the question log right now so that everyone can see it. So I will definitely post a discussion forum for you guys to answer this question about has my sound cut out? Okay, good. Sorry, it's just not showing up on the audio. Yeah, so I'll post a discussion forum and you guys can all post where you get the cheap versions. The Moodle site will stay active for a long while after this is finished. So it's 7:05, and so we should finish up soon. Deborah has asked why go to Webinar rather than Adobe Connect. We've had some issues with Adobe Connect. While it might seem more user-friendly, it's we don't have as much flexibility using it. It's getting better, but it's just a little bit off yet. Okay, I'm going to finish up. And I will see you all next week, hopefully, and on the Moodle site. And someone's asked, when is the homework due? It's due next week. And I'll have a look at it. And anyone who wants me to, if I can discuss your photos in the thing, I will happily show them and we can discuss other ways you can improve. You can access the Moodle at any time. So we've just had someone log in and say that they were told to log in at 7. I'm not sure where the timing went wrong in that one. But I will be uploading this webinar tonight and you can look at it then. And hopefully I'll see you next week. It actually does start at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Okie dokie. Put your homework up on the Moodle.